What do we, okay. Good evening, Concord Township. We are going to open up the 7 o'clock p.m. public hearing. This is for zoning map amendment and preliminary plan application 0320-2, submitted by Summers Real Estate Group LLC for a proposed residential conservation development R2 RCD district for approximately 29.6 acres of land owned by Colburn Development LLC, located off of Colburn Road and currently known as permanent parcel numbers 08-A-002-B-00-018-0 and 08-A-002-B-00-009-0. Good evening, everyone that is in attendance here with us or online. In regards to this application, I would like to state before we get started, as a preliminary matter, the board did hear substantial comments from the public on the June 3rd meeting in regards to this application that all three of the trustees present tonight plan on addressing. I would ask Mr. Summers to come forward and see if there's anything new as far as the updates since our last meeting and any other questions that you may be able to answer that were raised on the June 3rd meeting. Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Richard Summers, 10585 Somerset Drive, Chardon, Ohio. Just a few quick updates. The landscape plan has been updated to show plantings at lot 5 and 6. Additional plantings will be installed at the rear of the lots for screening. This was requested by a homeowner and we've agreed to do that. Just a few other comments since the board has already heard our presentation. I would note the yield plan meets the Lake County Planning Commission standards for sketch plans subdivisions as required by the Concord Township RCD requirements. I'd also note that in researching the codes of both the Lake County Planning Commission and Concord Township, nowhere in either code is the storm sewer retention basins required to be on this plan. We've gone above and beyond to add those to at least get an idea. We've used outside people for survey, third-party topo. That's why the creek changed a little bit once the topo was done. The yield plan is reasonable and marketable. However, the RCD plan we feel is a much better plan. Stream slopes and natural features are all preserved in the open space areas. That's basically all I have to say. I would like to hear from the public and answer any questions that they may have or comment after the public portion.
One question I have, what type of additional landscape improvements did you make as far as?
A homeowner that abuts lots 5 and 6, which are on the left side coming in on Timber Lane. I can't remember the name from memory, but she requested some plantings there at the back of the lots to screen. There is a creek at the bottom and up to her property where we did not clear, but she felt that the additional plantings would be an asset and we agreed to do that. There was also a fellow at the other end by the retention pond. Those improvements were actually done for the last meeting, but that also was changed. Again, trying to screen the neighbors and seed and plant trees in those open areas.
Okay. My understanding is that natural buffer at the rear of those residence lot on Timber Lane is going to be planted with trees and things of that nature.
It's a combination of a mound. It'll be approximately
system?
3 to 4 feet high, depending on the adjacent topography. And then there will be a combination of evergreens that stay green year round and provide excellent screening, along with deciduous trees. The landscape planner expects some fast growing and meadow, transition from meadow around the pond to large growth trees over time.
Okay, thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to ask if there is anybody online that has any new questions or comments regarding this proposal. We did field a lot of public comment at the last initial public hearing. So I would ask that if you have something new that you would like to ask or comment on, please do that at this time. I will limit time to 3 minutes. And if you could, please state your name and name and address for the record when you begin to speak. Is there anyone on the line that would like to speak at this point in time? Is there anybody on the line?
Hi, this is Christine Hadley.
Okay, Miss Hadley.
Hi, 11505 Colburn Road. I think this is kind of a reiteration, not a reiteration, a follow-up. Just because something has been done before in the township and there's a history of something doesn't mean that it's right exactly. Mr. Summers has been allowed to put retention ponds in the open space on previous RCD neighborhoods, but it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't mean that we have to do the same thing over and over again. So I would just ask that we consider that just because something has been done before doesn't mean it has to be done again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else on the line?
Yeah, John Nito.
Hi, Miss Nito.
Hi, 8305 Timberlane. I couldn't really hear much of what Mr. Summers said. I think the reception might be bad or something. But about the drainage easement, on the yield plan, he only has the one pond and it's on the wetlands. And it's in the backyards of the homeowners there, so that doesn't play a role then? I couldn't understand what he's saying.
You're talking.
The outside of the people's yards, not in the people's yards, because wouldn't that be considered, territory that the utilities would have to go in, possibly into their backyards, the two sublots that are involved in this, to fix things or what have you? I don't think it should be in the backyards of these people, on the R1 plan I'm talking.
Okay,
He talked about the easement and that, but I couldn't understand everything he said.
I don't know if we had.
Why don't we
discussion
just-
today
why don't
about
we-
the easement, but we will address that.
Yeah, just as far as the
You got that?
the retention pond being in the wetlands and the sewers coming in on the wetlands, on the yield plan, I think it should have been redone so it isn't in people's backyards and it isn't coming through people's backyards. The RCD plan has it correct. It gave that area for that to come in. But
Okay.
I thought we were going off the yield plan first to approve that, to get to the number of homes, et cetera, for the.
No, the R1 plan was approved, right?
I don't understand how.
No,
With that,
no.
The drainage easements and that retention pond is right in people's backyards. How is that approved?
No, I think Jen, this is Morgan McIntosh. I think you have it. There's no approval of the R1 plan. The way that the process is set up and the way that the zoning text works up, and let's be clear that that's not just exclusively a Concord Township thing. That runs all the way up to the county, involving the Planning Commission and the various other entities. The purpose of the R1 plan is a proof of concept to show that a land is developable under the R1. It isn't required at this point that it be it isn't required that it goes through all the steps to take it to fruition as if it was an actual plan. The only requirement is that it's a conceptual presentation, and it doesn't have to go into the detail you're suggesting. There's no requirement for that. We do not have to approve the R1 plan. What is before us tonight is or at this point with the public hearing, is the question of whether we are going to grant the rezone, and that's simply to change the land over as far as its zoning classification This was going to play in the remarks, I would say, later, but I'd like to remind everybody that you're talking about specifics that will be addressed when the plan, as if the zoning's denied and Mr. Summers goes through the R1, he has to go through a full approval, what you're talking about. If we grant the rezone, he takes the RCD plan and makes it a formal plan, and that has to go through subdivision review. So it's not that both of them go through that review. We're here to determine what the zoning classification is, and then he takes the plans forward to subdivision. Did I get that right?
Doesn't the yield plan determine the number of homes, and then he gets bonuses for the RCD plan off the yield plan? But if the yield plan shouldn't have as many homes on there to be reasonable and marketable, then I just don't understand how we can go with basically a yield plan and move towards the RCD without the yield plan reflecting true things.
Well, I guess that's certainly an opinion, and I think when you come to the definition marketable and reasonable, that's sort of subjective evaluation. So it's certainly, if you object to it and you think that it's not reasonable, marketable, then that's certainly I understand that you do, and I hear that. I hear that from you and some of the other residents. But what I'm telling you is there's no requirement in the process that it be taken to full review and be completely technically approved as you're requiring. That's the way that the process is set up. That's the way. I don't know that there's ever a point in any rezone for any classifications that we ever go to that level of detail. That's just not how zoning works.
And ma'am, I guess it was a bit clear. What I meant was that the R1 yield plan met the zoning requirements for Concord Township.
I was not in that impression at all.
Okay. Well, the R1 plan did meet the minimum zoning requirements for Concord Township.
As far as the drainage easements and everything, and the amount of retention ponds and all that?
If that plan were to be developed, it would have to go through further diligence to be approved as buildable, but for the purpose that it's being constructed now, it isn't required to go to that level of detail.
Yeah, it's cutting in and out. I don't know if too many people have their minds open or what, but I can't understand a little bit.
Okay. Well, I think we'll address some of what you have an issue of in our discussion amongst the three of us, because I have some specific notes on that. So we will move on. Is there anybody else on the telephone that has some new comments or questions that weren't originally stated at the first public hearing? You can speak now. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, this is Mike Adams. I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Adams.
Address?
567 Colford Road. My question is on the process. So tonight you're going to make a ruling on whether you agree with the plan to go further into development. What's the next step after that? This is where all, just taxpayers trying to do what's right for our property and for the community. What's the process?
I'm going to have Heather Friedman, our zoning inspector, respond to that question for you, sir.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Hi, Mike, this is Heather. So,
Hi, Heather. How are you?
good. If the zoning amendment is approved, it becomes effective within 30 days. And at that point, the developer would submit their formal plans to the Lake County Planning Commission. They are the entity that has the review authority over subdivisions in unincorporated areas in Ohio. So they'll submit their formal preliminary plan to the Planning Commission, where the Planning Commission submits that plan to all the other county agencies that are involved in the review process, including but not limited to, like the Lake County engineer, stormwater, soil and water, utilities, the sanitary engineer, They also submit those plans to the township to make sure that it still conforms with township zoning, fire department regulations, and also our township service department regulations. Then after they get their preliminary plan approved by the county, they continue to move through the process. They submit their formal improvement plans, including their plats, and they're also getting permits from Army Corps of Engineer and Ohio EPA for any things that those agencies require for the developer to move through a subdivision review process. And at that point, the township again is able to look at those plans and ensure that they still conform to our regulations. I hope that kind of summarized that enough for you.
No, that's perfect. That's way more information than I needed, so thank you so much.
Okay.
My question is, so it is middle of June, do we anticipate seeing buildings starting August? I mean, will
I don't,
increase? Beginning of third quarter, fourth quarter?
I don't know if we can even answer that at this point because we haven't made a determination of
Zoning,
zone.
yeah. It's kind of up to Mr. Summers.
I'm just trying to understand process and, the flow of the process, so I appreciate it.
Well, I guess maybe to fill in a little bit, if it's approved, and like Ms. Freeman said, it goes into the process, then that's sort of up to the developer and whatever their construction timelines are.
And I also think that,
That's perfect.
I think that,
Appreciate your time.
I think the developer also,
Way more.
Mr. Adams, I think the developer also addressed, working with, traffic redirection and things of that nature to,
Yeah, that's, I mean, look, I enjoy the evening walk with my dogs. Up and down the street with limited traffic, I don't have to worry about trucks and that kind of stuff, so I was just curious to see when it was gonna change as well.
okay.
For the short term, of building, I understand that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there anybody else on the line who has something new to ask that was not previously stated in the first public hearing? If you would state your name and your address for the record.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is William Witt at 8347 Timberlane Drive. I don't think I've heard anything about a plan for street lighting. Since the people on Timberlane specifically and some on Colburn will be looking at streetlights in their backyard now, I thought I would ask about what that might look like. And also, is there a way for you, the trustees, to place some limitations on those to help respect the character of our neighborhood? Timberlane has no streetlights except the intersections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't we just keep going?
Yeah, we'll keep going. Anybody else on the line that has anything new that hasn't been brought up at the first public hearing? Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, ma'am. If you could state your name and address for the record.
This is Vanessa Pesek, 11705 County Court. The first question is that I heard that in the landscape plan that the developer has modified it or had proposals about modifying the plan. And so my question is, prior to your approval, will that landscape plan that's been improved be in writing? We've had over the years problems where the developer might say one thing, but then because it's not in writing, it doesn't end up happening. So I would hope that the final landscape plan that's been promised to the residents would be in writing before you approve it. Second, I looked up the staff report from the Lake County Planning Commission, and it says the proposed storm sewers should be located in the right of way, not at the rear of sublots. The township will not accept any drainage easements in backyards.
Correct.
So, I understand that, and so my question is, why would you accept a yield plan that shows retention ponds in people's backyards? That
seems to me to not be an approved plan for, for the township. I understand very well that the planning commission has approved that on a conceptual basis, but there is no reason that the township can't look into that yield plan further and make additional comments, concerns, modifications, and requests from the developer to do the right thing by the township in terms of being reasonable and marketable. You have the power to do that, and I think that's what residents are asking for, is reasonable and marketable yield plan. And that would include the appropriate amount of drainage. Currently, he only shows a third of the drainage that is in his own RCP plan. He said, this is the amount of drainage I need in my RCP plan. In the R1 yield plan, he only shows 1/3 of that amount. So it seems to me that, again, you should be asking for a yield plan that is reasonable and marketable. And the third point that I'd like to request is that it seems that the citizens spent a long time with very thoughtful questions at the last public hearing. And it seems to me that they asked them of you, and that you should answer those questions so that if they have a clarifying question or comment or something comes up, that they are able to ask something else before you close the public hearing, because otherwise you're not really listening that well to the residents.
Okay,
It's very much a one-way street.
thank you, Vanessa.
You have to keep it open until afterwards, so that you're doing the dialogue that I know that the trustees had stated that you want to do with residents.
And I thank you for your comments, and I disagree. I did tell you that we are going to answer the questions. We did listen to the residents. I think all of us had substantial conversations either through email or over the phone with residents, speaking with them, answering questions, maybe not in the form of the trustee meeting, but we certainly did answer several questions over the phone and via email. And I did indicate to you that there would be responses from all the trustees regarding their questions tonight during the trustee meeting. So I appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else on the line who has anything to comment on or ask questions that has not either been asked before or new? I'm sorry, somebody there? I'll turn up the volume. Go ahead, ma'am. You can state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, hello, my name is Beth Ford. I'm at 1759. My concern is, when it rained, when we had that really substantial rain in May, we had a large amount of water coming from that back area that was cleared, coming through the back of our property into the stream that's running to our backyard. So my question is, since back behind our property is considered wetland, have the Army Corps of Engineers, who protects wetlands, been notified and have approved them building anything, the sewer line or any of those homes in that back section, the north section of that property?
Okay, we had a considerable amount of questions on stormwater that we plan on responding to. I know that as far as the stormwater, that's out of the purview of this zoning amendment. That would be addressed in the engineering portion of the site development plan, is my understanding, with the Ohio EPA as well as the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as Lake County Stormwater. There are checks and balances as far as if the zoning text amendment is approved and the plan moves forward, those functions or those parts of the development will take place. So we are going to have some additional comment on stormwater, but rest assured that, and it's in the transcripts from the previous meetings, that when that engineering is done, there is not going to be more water runoff in that area. It has to be at the same level or less than. Is there anybody else on the line that would like to ask a question or make a comment that we haven't discussed during the first public hearing?
This is Tim Rencheck, 8180 Rainbow Drive. I guess my question goes to understanding the process and the township signing on. Can you revisit your approval? In the case of the stormwater, if the Corps of Engineers doesn't come up with something that meets the township needs, can you rescind your approval and revisit that?
According to our legal advisor, we cannot rescind or, Mr. Lucas, do you want to comment on that? And again, I think I spoke to, this is part of the site development.
This is Mike Lucas. To answer your question, number one, the sole limit of the legislative function tonight is to rezone. The question regarding the wetlands and the Army Corps of Engineers is independent of the rezoning itself. It deals with the actual site plan that's going to be presented, as our zoning inspector indicated, to the Lake County Planning Commission and the Lake County Engineer for review of that. The wetlands, the county, or excuse me, the trustees do not have any authority with reference to wetlands. It's a consideration in terms of appropriate planning for a site plan, but the township itself doesn't have any authority in that regard. And the township, if there is an approval by the Army Corps of Engineers of the site plan presented, then the question is moot. If there's not an approval, then the developer is going to have to make some changes in that, because otherwise he's going to be in federal court for violation of disturbance of wetland. All of that, though, is completely separate and independent from the rezoning here tonight.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on the line that has something new that we haven't discussed previously in the first public hearing that would like to state their name and address for the record? You can speak now.
Yes, this is Kim Tamba. I'm at 8315 Timber Lane. And maybe just for the clarification of, those of us that are involved and don't do this for a living, maybe if there was an outline of, okay, we understand that it's currently zoned R1. We're in the process, I understand, of, the developer trying to get the RCD. So then, if that happens, what happens next? Maybe if there were just an outline that would say, once this happens, this is what comes next. Here's the, 25 things that need to be done before building begins. Just so we would maybe have an idea of what the process is. I've heard a couple times people say, what's the process? Maybe that would just be something that we could have in our hands that would help us follow, the trail of what's going on.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else on the line that has a statement to make or a question that hasn't previously been asked? You can state your name and address for the record. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Summers, would you like to respond to any of the new comments or questions that were raised? I know there, in respect to the easement, I don't know if you can address that. I know there was some comment about that before. Thank you.
I'm going to move this closer back so folks can hear them a little better, if that's okay. Just set that right there. Okay.
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
I know there was a question that in respects to the easement or the retention basin. I don't remember that coming up.
The retention, as was said, is part of the next step in the process.
Right.
We go to Lake County Planning Commission for a preliminary plan review, which is basically the plan we've presented tonight.
Correct.
With any conditions that you might put on that approval. Then, that meeting, by the way, is a public meeting and the public is welcome to speak at that meeting. We then move on to get numerous permits that usually run concurrently. Our Army Corps of Engineer permit, our soil and water plan, our stormwater plan, all the plans that are required. There's about at least 12 agencies that'll look at this and approve it. To answer the question about construction, I would not think that we would get these plans done in time for August construction. Maybe September, could be October. You never know with the system and what might be approved and what might be sent back for questioning. So I can't really answer the timeline. That's dependent on the agencies that are approving.
Thank you.
There were a couple other things mentioned. Street lights, as you're aware of, any street lights in a subdivision in Concord Township have to be approved by the trustees. We would agree to not put street lights in here if that's what the township wants. I know in the past there was the previous trustees didn't, at least 2 of them didn't like street lights. So again, trying to work with the neighbors, we would agree to no street lights. And I understand their concern. There was also a question about the sewers. We have agreed to move the mainline trunk sewers up to the right of way out of the rear yards. There will be some sewers that go down the sides. Those will be in an easement in favor of the homeowners association. That association is responsible for those yard drains and storm sewers, but the main line will be on the road, as will the sanitary. There was some confusion last time about that. The sanitary sewer doesn't go to the rear yards until it gets very far north out of the cul-de-sac.
Great. And I believe you, there was a question I think Ms. Pesek raised regarding the revised landscape plan. I believe you submitted that to the...
That is submitted. It was just submitted today. Unfortunately, the guy was a little behind.
So we have that.
And again, I would, however your law director wants to do it or you want to do it, we would agree to make it a condition of that approval that that's the minimum landscape plan.
Okay.
And if there's any other conditions that the trustees would like to discuss, we're open to discuss that.
Morgan?
I had one thing, just, it was raised, we received in writing some concerns of the residents along Timber Lane, and there's a lot of things, I mean, I'll address some of them. A lot of this stuff has come down to the water, and I think we've talked about this being more county related and us not having the authority. And though we don't really have the authority on this one, it was a request, if the developer would use the least impactful way to cross the 2 streams and consider something like a three-sided box culvert. Is that something that you'd be willing to entertain?
We saw that comment. It's approximately $20,000 cost. At this point, we would agree to that. We are going to minimize the stream crossings to a minimum the right-of-way, which is 60 feet, so it would be a total of 120 feet. And that will also be part of the Army Corps permit. We would agree to that 3-sided box culvert to maintain stream integrity.
Okay, I appreciate that, since, like I said, it's not something we can demand of you, but I think it's generous of you to make that concession. Thank you.
I just had one question.
Yes.
How many extra trees are on the new plan,
I don't have
roughly?
15 to 20 at least. And
Extra.
that's just behind lot 5 and 6. There is a schedule on the left side of that plan of the number of trees, and it listed by species and by number. It's fairly substantial. And if it's determined that after these stormwater ponds are designed, that we need more trees, we're willing to put them in. But what you see, we would agree to as the minimum planning, and I think that will serve as a effective screen as well as directing stormwater away from Timber Lane, although the terrain runs away from Timber Lane anyway, but that 3-foot mound should help any water from migrating onto anybody's backyard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Any other questions?
I have none.
Thank you.
Seeing that we have no other questions, are you ready to close the public hearing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we will close this public hearing. Thank you for those that attended with us over the phone.
We're not gonna shut down, Mr. Chair, we're just gonna roll
Roll
right
into
into
meeting?
the regular
Okay.
trustee meeting.
So I will call to order the Concord Township Board of Trustees meeting for June 17th, 2020. You can all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Mrs. Dawson.
Mrs. Lucci.
Present.
Mr. McIntosh.
Present.
Mr. Dondorfer.
Present.
Can you ask if Miss Carrie Shack is on the line? I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, we're still on? We're
Yeah,
not?
we're live and Carrie, are you with us?
Is Carrie Shack on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Carrie, welcome. We have recognition for you. This is the recognition letter for Girl Scout Gold Award. Congratulations. Mr. Rose is going to read our recognition letter for you.
Okay.
Girl Scout Gold Award recipient Carrie Shack. It is with great pleasure that the trustees of Concord Township extend their congratulations to Carrie Shack for attainment of the very prestigious Gold Award. Anyone who has known a Gold Award recipient understands the hard work and dedication that accompanies this award. However, it is certainly worth noting that the Gold Award is awarded to fewer than 6% of Girl Scouts annually. Each Gold Award Girl Scout spends 1 to 2 years on her project. Your leadership, service, and dedication is demonstrated with your project consisting of developing, organizing volunteers, and implementing an art club for 5th graders at Buckeye Elementary School with volunteering over 109 hours. The different art techniques taught to paint children's book covers on ceiling tiles will be enjoyed by all for many years to come. Carrie, we wish you the best with your future endeavors, and we look forward to watching you grow as a future community leader. Congratulations on receiving the Girl Scout Gold Award. Sincerely, the Concord Township Board of Trustees, Carl Dondorfer, Morgan McIntosh, and Amy Lucci.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Carrie, that's quite an honor. And we hope your future is bright. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Carrie, I
Mr.
just
Chair.
wanted to add that it shows true leadership. Please continue to inspire others, and we wish you continued success.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Carrie. I'm sure this went, a lot of hard work went toward it, and it's quite an achievement that you should be very proud of, and good luck in your future.
Thank you.
Could you let her know we'll make arrangements to get that signed original to her later this
Carrie, our administrator will make arrangements to get your recognition letter to
this week.
this week. Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we will move now to approve the minutes from the June 3rd, 2020 public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes for the public hearing, and I'll go ahead and make a motion. Can we do these together or separate?
50, separate.
Okay.
Mike?
Public
Yes.
hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we need to approve the minutes for the June 3rd, 2020 regular trustees meeting.
I move that we approve the June 3rd, 2020 regular trustees meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now to elected officials reports. Ms. Dawson, our fiscal officer.
I have no report at this time. Mr. Dondorfer?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mrs. Lucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say it's been a very busy last few weeks. I've had a lot of conversations, meetings this week with key stakeholders in our fire station project, as well as continuing my own research on this project. We did attend our first stakeholder meeting last evening, which we thought went very well. We appreciate everybody's time, those that were there and those that joined us virtually. I also engage in a lot of correspondence with residents by email, by phone, regarding the proposed RCD. and have done extensive research on my own. I appreciate the the questions that help me delve more into understanding zoning, so that's all very, I'm grateful for that. I've met with some residents on the Summerwood development concerning issues along the path and a issue with a pond. I responded to a resident asking about our grocer, if there's still any word. Those are still in negotiations, so we can't make any announcements on that yet. I attended the Greater Cleveland Cemetery Association meeting, which was hosted in Concord by our Concord group. And I just want to say, watching the news very carefully, I feel for what everyone's going through right now. But I do want to acknowledge my continued support for our Lake County Sheriff's Office and our local police force and police everywhere. You have my support. And last, I would like to wish all of the fathers out there a wonderful Father's Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Lucci. Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just like I think all of us have been fairly busy preparing for the stakeholder meeting, which I do feel was very successful. I know I had a chance to speak with a lot of residents after the meeting broke up, and that was encouraging. I felt like there was some good dialogue going on, and I appreciate the support we had within the community to come and listen and dialogue with us, share opinions, and ask the questions. I think it's important. We all know what a critical project this is for the township, and it's good to see the engagement, and it's good to see that we have some energy moving forward. I've had a lot of conversation regarding this rezone that we just had the public hearing for. I've talked with a couple of different agencies as well, just been staying on top of that. I did receive some complaints recently regarding junk property and junk vehicles in the township, so that is something I'll be discussing with our zoning inspector and legal. I did also receive a complaint regarding I don't know, is there such a thing as a junk home? We have a burned out home out on Route 86, and I had a resident contact me actually just this afternoon to discuss that. It's been an ongoing problem, and I think we're going to try to rattle the cages. I know there's some sticky legal problems associated with that, but we're going to try and see if we can't get something going there. So I would also like to express my support in the community for the Lake County Sheriff's Department. I have seen them quite a few times. Sometimes it seems to go. I don't see them a lot, but I will say in the last 2 weeks I've seen their presence in my neighborhood and around the township a lot, and I appreciate that. They know they work hard and do a lot to keep Concord safe, and like to express my support for that. And I would also like to wish the fathers out there happy Father's Day.
Thank you. I also would like to reiterate it has been a very busy week. A lot going on. I was very happy with our first stakeholders meeting. I think we had close to 80 people show up personally, and then maybe another 20 virtually. I thought it was a great way to kick off this fire station project that is very important to this township as far as sustaining our safety services and protecting our first responders, specifically our firefighters. So I was excited to see a lot of collaboration, a lot of good input, a lot of good ideas from our residents, and we plan on looking forward to working with them on some additional stakeholder meetings in the future. I did take a few calls on some drainage issues that I'm working with residents as well as our service director and some members of the county agencies to help facilitate getting those rectified. I did also have some lengthy discussion on the RCD proposal. I spoke with several residents. I entertained some emails, and I believe all of us, since the first meeting on the 3rd, have taken copious amounts of notes to address the questions that residents have. We've all done research, and it's been sort of exciting for me, not coming from zoning like Morgan, to get up to speed and learn as much as we have, right, Amy?
Absolutely.
Over the last couple of weeks. So we've learned a lot, and we hope to make the best decisions that we can for the residents of the township. I would like to say, I support our first responders, specifically law enforcement coming from the Sheriff's Department after 25 years. Most of those guys that are out there now I hired, they're honorable peace officers. They do the job the right way. They do it because they're passionate, and they do it because they're good public servants, and they enjoy serving the public. And I commend them. I hope they are all safe, and thank you for your service.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to express my appreciation and admiration for how quickly you both have jumped into the zoning fight as far as learning that. I spent 10 years on the zoning commission doing these things, and I know that you guys started this a couple weeks ago with very little experience and asking me a lot of questions, and you have done a very commendable job picking it up so quickly. So I just want to say that I'm honored to work with you, and your work ethic is very commendable, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that moves us into department reports with our administration department and our administrator, Mr. Rose.
Good evening, Mr. Dondorfer, members of the board, Mrs. Dawson, members of the audience, both, well, out in cyberspace. Good evening. A few things to cover this evening. With regard to the fire station stakeholder meeting, the video along with the slide presentations should be posted to the website no later than Friday afternoon. The videographer is doing technical stuff which allows it to go from the video camera to the computer to the website to get that ready. So that should be all posted to the website by Friday afternoon, along with the my slideshow presentation and the architect slideshow presentation. So everything we presented will be on the website, and the entire meeting was recorded, and that will also be on the website for everyone to either watch or rewatch. I want to thank everyone that was there live or virtually for their participation. And Mr. Chair, I know you thanked them yesterday, but just one more time, I'd like to thank Quill Hollow Resort Hotel for providing the venue. That worked out great and allowed everybody to appropriately distance, and they made it a very comfortable experience. Some other things, we added an item to the agenda at the last minute. Item A under new business is a change order for PO 10 TAC 2020, which is the joint road repaving project. Tim Brown has been working with the county engineers. Some issues were discovered with the base underneath Nancy Ann Drive. We meaning the contractor, has to go back in there, and it's going to require some concrete stabilization of the base of the road. They're probably going to go down somewhere between 16 and 24 inches and do a concrete stabilization. So we're going to request a change order, and that's up for vote under item A. That came out to $185,464.40 for additional emergency road work. The service department also continues to remain very busy in other areas. This past week, and I believe pictures were sent to the trustees and Mrs. Dawson, the new salt structure was completed. We did a lot of the work ourselves. I think we saved ourselves $40,000. They did a great job, and that structure is now up and running, and it tremendously expands our storage capability and capacity. Recreation department, I talked to Deb Esker today. She is just absolutely giddy. The community center is open. Regular activities have started back. We've got classes resuming. We have a few small group activities that are starting to resume, and things are going very, very well, and folks are glad to be going in there and enjoying our community center once again. Deb asked me to remind everybody that the applications for the college scholarships for those recently graduated high school seniors and the Citizen of the Year applications are still open, but they are closing soon. And in addition, the window to submit items for the Concord History Book is closing by the end of August. So if you think you have a notable resident, old pictures, any type of memorabilia that you would like or think would be great to be included in the book, please get that into the Recreation Department by the end of August. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. We are now into the audience portion of the trustees meeting this evening. Is there anybody on the line that would like to participate in the audience portion? If so, could you please state your name and address for the record? Okay, seeing none, we will move into old business. As far as old business, on the agenda now is to accept the zoning commission recommendation to approve with modifications the zoning map amendment and preliminary plan application 0320-2 submitted by Summers Real Estate Group LLC for a proposed residential conservation development R2 RCD district for approximately 29.6 acres of land owned by Colburn Development LLC, located off of Colburn Road and currently known as permanent parcel numbers 08-A-012-B-00-018-0 and 08-A-012-B-00-009-0.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendation of the zoning commission to approve the rezone.
I second.
I believe if you are going to make that motion, you want to include the conditions,
Okay.
which will voluntarily agree.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Gilchrist. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend my motion to include the conditions that Mr. Summers agreed to, which I believe we had the three-sided box culvert.
No streetlights.
Oh, and the no, and it was willing, amenable to no streetlights when we get there. The land to also include the landscaping plan will be, that is presented as of this evening, is to be a minimum landscaping plan.
I believe there's, he said he would add more.
Yes, but that's a minimum plan.
I second.
Okay. Now we're going to get into this discussion portion of this. There's been significant input that has been provided by the residents in the area. I'm going to cover as many as I can here, and then all three of us are going to try to cover all those. Starting out, it seemed when I read all the notes that I took during the first hearing on June 3rd, there was a significant concern for stormwater. We did reach out to Stephen Hauser from Lake County Stormwater in regards to those specific concerns of stormwater, and I'll summarize his response from Stormwater, again, Stephen Hauser, in regards to the stormwater issues. The subdivision improvement plans will be reviewed thoroughly in accordance with county development standards and subdivision regulations. The plans will be evaluated for compliance with these standards to mitigate the increased stormwater runoff with the proposed development and with adjacent properties in mind. The subdivision will be subject to designing its stormwater management to equal or reduce the rate of runoff compared to the pre-developed conditions for compliance with the county standards. The developer will be responsible for correcting any deficient appurtenances within the development that may be contributing to adverse drainage impacts during construction and development. And I'm summarizing what Steve Hauser from Lake County Stormwater responded to on our questions regarding stormwater. Again, I think that's out of the purview of this zoning amendment, but I wanted to ensure the residents that were concerned out there that there is a mechanism for monitoring that and make sure that the engineering regarding the stormwater is done effectively and appropriately. With the Ohio EPA as well as Lake County Stormwater in the development stages of the plan. So I wanted to let the residents know that we addressed that. As well as I think we had some discussion about the storm sewers being located within the right of way. I got my tongue tied. That's also going to be addressed appropriately. There was some questions regarding requiring the developer to use the least impactful way to cross the two streams, such as a three-sided box culvert, which I think Mr. McIntosh just touched on. But Mr. Hauser did indicate that the developer will be required to obtain necessary permitting from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for stream enclosure and crossing. This permitting process will evaluate and take into consideration the stream channel and biological criteria and determine a viable crossing structure to minimize impact on the stream. And I think that addresses some of the concerns I read in my note about the impacts on that stream. There was questions about the feasibility and buildability of some of the lots. And again, I think those are personal opinions. They're subjective in nature. Even if they're up against the riparian setback, I believe, and my understanding is they do meet zoning requirements. What one person might consider as a buildable lot, somebody else might not. So that I believe is subjective in nature. I know we had some concerns about traffic in the area impacting the residents on Timber Lane. I can assure you that Mr. Summers has indicated that he will work to remedy that so it doesn't impact the residents on Timber Lane. We can certainly help facilitate some of those traffic concerns in the township, and we will make sure that that is not an issue. Do either of you have any comments? I'm trying to go over my notes on what I wanted to touch on. I know we were sort of piecing some of our responses as to what we wanted to hit on. Morgan, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, a lot to digest here. I think a lot of. You want to move?
Yeah.
Thank you. A lot of ground to cover here with respect to this rezone. As I said in the past, I've been in front of a few of these, but I've probably spent the most time, going over and having diligence on this particular rezone request. There was a comment in the staff report, and it was mentioned several times as a concern of the residents with respect to where a county agency had said that they had concern about the R1 yield plan and the marketability and reasonability of the lots. So I wanted to get some clarification because I hadn't seen that kind of a comment from that agency ever in the history of looking at these things. So I questioned it, and I spoke with the director of that department, and we had a good conversation about it. And his objection, or the objection of his department, was really, they weren't real enamored with the R1 plan, but said, hey, look, it meets its requirements, and we feel that the RCD is the way to go with that property. And that actually, I concurred with that, because my concern when I look at that R1 property is I don't want to see something like that developed. Given the challenges of this property, I think the rezone is the way to go. When I look at the way the landscaping plan is laid out, when I look at the way the property itself is laid out, it's not touching the critical things, and I think that's important. That is the spirit of conservation zoning, and I think that speaks to it. This is an ideal project for that. As you said, Mr. Chairman, a number of these issues raised with respect to the water issues they're not the legal authority of Concord. That's something we have to rely on outside agencies for, the county and the Army Corps of Engineers, and I think we heard Mr. Lucas explain the legal structure there, and that's not something that's in our purview, but it is there, and that's what protects the residents. I did receive some email and some requests, and I did have a phone call to somebody that kind of challenged me or questioned with respect to zoning in Concord, not zoning, development in Concord, and all this growth and cutting down trees. I know that we had said also a couple times, and I wanted to correct, there's reference to clear cutting. The property wasn't clear cut. I think that's a misrepresentation. In fact, if we want to see it clear cut, I think we could go ahead and deny this and see an R1 plan developed, and we would see a lot more trees taken out. We'd see more removed. We wouldn't get the landscaping put in. But speaking a bit to the development in Concord, when we look at projects like this, we know they're coming. If you look at the zoning map, you see all around Concord Township, all the R1 properties and all of the residential. Many of those districts have been in place for 30, 40, 50 years, as old as Concord zoning is. So this development is not being decided today to now. These lands were always going to have homes on them. The way I've always felt about zoning in Concord, it's our responsibility to responsibly steward that development. So the development is coming. It's been here. We've seen tremendous growth over the last 2 decades in Concord Township, and I think this is the kind of plan that suits our developments in Concord. So I support it. Mr. Summers always does a good job. I know in my development here recently, he's just working out the final touches on some things, and he's very good at carrying through what he says. So I'm glad that he's working on this one.
So thanks.
Sorry, I'm just.
Thanks, Morgan, for kind of outlining some of those key points, I think. In my discussions with some of the residents, I think they agreed that, an RCD would be preferable. When I look at some of the questions that I've been fielded, some of the things that I think are important to maybe to say again or to answer are that the sublots on the yield plan did conform to minimum zoning requirements for the R1 district. The Lake County Planning Commission stated that the yield plan can support 43 sublots. The retention ponds and stormwater management issues are approved by the Lake County engineer. We don't have jurisdiction over that. Stormwater ponds are permitted to be located on sublots if approved by the Lake County engineer. The developer has submitted his landscape plan and has agreed to additional landscaping if so required. The RCD plan does comply with open space requirements as set forth by the zoning resolution. Property has not been clear cut, as we just discussed. Stormwater and flooding, again, not part of our jurisdiction. Any additional comments by stormwater engineer, developer will have to comply with the Army Corps of Engineers. We've said that again. The subdivision development will be evaluated for compliance with standards to mitigate increased stormwater runoff. Again, not our purview. Crossings and streams are not under the jurisdiction of Concord. They are from Lake County engineer. And the stormwater did state in an email that the plan accurately represents the actual site conditions. So those are sort of the facts that I'm going, that I'm looking at in looking at whether or not to approve this. I know the residents, it's been very difficult to have a lot of wooded area that, is not the same. It's a big change. We all know how difficult it is when we've had privacy and we've had something that looked the same way for 40 years, all of a sudden it looked different. So I understand, I empathize, I understand that, that's difficult. But as Morgan said, we've had these plans in place. I think the residents, all agree that the RCD is probably a better way to go. So just wanted to make those comments.
Pivot that back, just drag it over. Just turn it more my direction. Yeah, Ms. Lucci said something that I think is, in my conversation with Mr. Donaldson up at the Conservation District, he and I had an interesting conversation about the two plans, and I did challenge a bit. I said, well, you're questioning the, your comment in the report says you're questioning the yield plan, but then you're going ahead and approving it. And he said, no, don't misunderstand me. We think RCD is the way to go on that property, which again, reinforced my conclusion, which I'd had originally. We did have a conversation about the process. I know that was a big discussion tonight where people were asking the question, and as this R1 plan has been scrutinized, it meets the requirements. And he even said that though he didn't particularly care for the way the plan shook out, look, that chunk of land is going to support the number of houses. So I circle back then to my original thing is I'd rather see the RCD plan than an R1 plan where we lose more trees and it's just not, I just don't think the product is going to be as nice. I think we're going to do more to conserve it. And I do want to go on the record as at least there's one trustee on this board now that doesn't like streetlights, because I don't like them either. I have one in front of my house and I can't stand it. So I'm right along with the residents on Timber Lane. No lights is good with me. So I will also add that I think LED lights are a big step forward. That does help. So, but I'm a no streetlight proponent as well.
Thank you. I would also like to just state, when you look at it, the R1 plan, I agree that the RCD is the way to go. I mean, you're gonna maintain 40% of the green space with the plan. I think it is better for the area, and I think Mr. Summers, he's very, amicable and has been very open to speaking with the residents and listening to them and, listening to their recommendations and doing above and beyond. So I thank you for that, and I think it will be a nice development for the area. So with that, we'll do a roll call vote to accept the zoning commission recommendation. Mrs. Dawson?
Mrs. Lucci?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Dondorfer?
Yes. Okay, thank you. We are going to move out of old business and into new business. And we have one item to vote on for the new business today.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we vote on the Service Department's change order to purchase order 10-2020 to increase the amount by $185,464.40 for additional emergency road work.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mrs. Dawson, future meetings and announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Dondorfer. On Friday, June 26th, we'll have a staff meeting at,
I would like to propose a time change just because of the conflict. If we could start that staff meeting at 8 a.m. if possible.
Certainly.
I have a question regarding that staff meeting. I keep forgetting to ask you about this. Are we doing that virtual still?
I think we'll have to because I'll be out of town, so I will be.
All right, then I'm fine.
so we'll
So 8 o'clock
All right.
is okay?
Can we do that virtually, Mr. Rose? Yes, sir.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll set up the meeting.
8 a.m.,
Thanks.
Mrs. Dawson.
8 a.m. on Friday, June 26th. Yippee. On
you.
Wednesday, July 1st, 6:30 p.m., trustees' office hours to be determined. Location, we're going to assume it's either the conference room or here, but we'll get back to you. And at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, July 1st, our normal trustee meeting will be here at Concord Town Hall, either in the meeting room or the conference room or somewhere at Concord Town Hall.
Thank you, Mrs. Dawson.
Thank you.
And
And
with
again,
that, Concord Township, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope you all stay well and healthy. If anybody out there in the community needs anything, please feel free to reach out to one of the trustees. We're always accessible, and look forward to speaking with you. Thank you, and that concludes our trustee meeting this evening.